I don't want to say anything for anybody.
Yeah.
I want to watch somebody like make tea in the morning and admire them and like watch their hands and the way that they pour the hot water.
I think there's a website for that, or like a YouTube channel or something. It's not that Ryan Adams is a big tea enthusiast, more like he's grateful for the little things in life. And he wants his music to say that. He'll show you how he made an optimistic divorce album coming up. I'm Tom Power. You're watching Q. Have you ever had something you've been dying to tell someone else? That happened to me, and it involved Diana Krall and an anonymous moment that happened, I'll say 15 years ago, and I finally told her about it.
You make me cry now. I didn't expect that.
That's me.
You don't like cry off first, like in the first
It's
conversation.
okay. You can cry all you want. We got tissues, we got everything, but that was me.
That's amazing. I remember that.
So if you want to hear from Diana Krall and find out exactly what's happening there, stick around. Plus, we've got comedian Dane Cook and filmmaker Kelly Asbury today on an action-packed Q. Years and years ago, before she was a big jazz singer, Diana Krall got a big piece of advice that stuck with her. Diana was just a kid sitting at a piano, and she was getting a lesson from her mentor, Ray Brown. Now, when I say Ray Brown was her mentor, I should also say that Ray Brown is one of the greatest jazz bassists ever to live. That day, when Diana was struggling at the piano, again, she was just a kid, Ray gave her a pro tip. He said, "Diana, play what you're comfortable with." That advice inspired Diana Krall's 14th album. It's called Turn Up the Quiet. On it, she digs deep into the American songbook and reimagines a lot of songs that many of us are, sure, comfortable with. Full disclosure, I've been a huge fan of Diana Krall's music since I was a teenager, and I saw her play on TV late in the night one night. So when I had the chance to make a very unusual confession to her, I took it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I got to start by...
My pleasure.
You and I have been talking for the past 10, 15 minutes, and I've been trying to hold off on trying to tell you the story because I've been dying to tell you. So I have a confession to make for you. In 2002, at the Junos in St. John's, Newfoundland, you won...
Best day ever.
You won a couple of Junos. You won Artist of the Year, and you also won Album of the Year for the record The Look of Love. I was a young man. I was in junior high, and I had gotten a seat at the last minute. I went down and kind of begged for seats. And they put me behind the jib. They put me behind the camera, obstructed view, right? And I was a really, really big fan of yours. And I really, really liked your music. And you got up and you accepted the award. And in one of those rare kind of quiet moments where you kind of went, "Oh, thank you," I shouted out, "I love you, Diana." And you said... Are you
the guy?
And you said, I love you too.
Yeah. You're kidding.
Yeah, that's me.
I think I remember that so well. You're
Yeah.
going to make me cry now. I didn't expect that.
That's me.
You don't like cry off first, like in the first
It's okay.
conversation.
You can cry all you want. We got tissues. We got everything. But that was me.
That's amazing. I remember that.
Do you really?
Yes, I do. That was a very, very spectacular time for me being there. And I wanted to move there after that. It was such a happy time. I loved it. I loved every moment.
I never.
Yeah. Yeah, and not because I won, but just the vibe and the feeling, and it was unexpected.
Yeah.
And
when I was in grade, so when I went back to school the next day, our teacher had taped it.
I had no idea.
He had taped it, and I've been trying to.
There's a YouTube of it, right?
There's not on YouTube. We're tracking down. We're trying to track down the archive, right? I think my mom thinks she has it on VHS. She's gonna try and dig it out.
Yeah.
So
I think I've seen it for some reason.
The teachers taped it, and they played it for my class the next day because Tom got on TV.
I've seen it, so I know because somebody it surfaced somewhere, and it broke my heart. And now I'm just completely. I can't finish my sentences anyways. That's why I'm sitting here at the piano.
Right.
But I'm completely.
So I didn't.
I had no idea. I didn't even know you liked me at all. I thought.
Oh
really?
yeah. I had that record. I liked you because when I was a kid in grade 7 or grade 8,
And you keep reminding me that. I was just a mere. I was in college. No,
when I was in my late 50s, there was there was you did a special. I think it was on Bravo. And it was on Bravo TV, and I just happened. I was staying up late. I was like later than I think my parents had gone to bed, and I'd snuck up and wanted to watch TV, and I came across, and it was the first time I had really ever seen jazz before, and I got.
And what were you playing at the time?
I wasn't playing. I was playing folk music. I was playing.
Yeah, but you were playing.
Yeah, I was playing a little bit, and I play a little piano, so I was trying to play a little bit of that too.
And all these years, I didn't know it was you. Mm-hmm. And isn't that just the nicest thing, as my mom would say?
Well, and I feel like if it wasn't for that moment, maybe I wouldn't be here right now. That was my TV debut.
And radio, as you know, is very, very inspiring. Inspires everything I do. I always say that for me, it's all about radio.
More than television?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite movie is Radio Days.
Oh yeah, you like the radio?
We had so many of them in my house growing up, and all on at the same time.
A lot of these songs are I was thinking about this record the other day, because a lot of these songs are kind of from that era, that pre-television era. There's that era where where we're listening to things on the radio. Like, I'm a big fan of the Grand Ole Opry. That's the idea that people would come in out of the fields, and people would come together and listen to the radio. And when you're covering Blue Skies here, when you're doing versions of Blue Skies here, and you're doing versions of I'm Confessing here, tell me a little bit about what made you go down the path to pick some of these songs out, these older songs.
Well, first of all, the songs that I chose are very modern, and I think it's you refer back to something like, where, for instance, Moonglow, where I feel it's a rainy day or whatever, or the roller rink at Coney Island, whatever's in my head. I think cinematically, so I'm always thinking of a film, not necessarily referencing a specific film, but I have a story or a visual in mind always. So. I realized that I have to improvise, and the songs that were written by Irving Berlin, Cole Porter, George Gershwin, Harold Arlen, were all recorded by Ornette Coleman, or Miles Davis, to Louis Armstrong, to Dean Martin, Nat Cole, and I still think that like something like that was like Irving Berlin to me is the most modern, because it's like, there may be trouble ahead, so while there's music and moonlight and love and romance. I mean, it's like those lyrics, I don't apologize for those anymore, because in all the chaos that's going on, we need a little love and romance. Let's face the music and dance. It's very it's political, but it's not. It's quite a statement. And when those songs were written, like Blue Skies, it's still, It's like Spinal Tap. It's in the sad key. You can reinvent these songs. Like for instance, like the song "How Deep Is the Ocean." How much do I love you? I'll tell you no lie. How deep is the ocean? So you can interpret it like a jazz interpretation of it, or you can take it and. How much do I love you? I'll tell you no lie. How deep is the ocean? How high is the sky? How many times in a day do I think of you? And you can go sort of, but Alan Toussaint, Donny Hathaway, and Leon Russell all somehow fit in there. And so these are songs that Charlie Parker made, songs that were, that scrabbled from the apple and ornithology, that were written over top of jazz standards into new jazz songs. So I just feel like these songs are a great canvas for me.
How do you feel about the kids these days? How do you feel about the state of jazz right now? How do you feel about are you heartened by the people you're playing with, that jazz has a good future?
I am, but the more isolated I am, the more I don't get to be a part of that.
What do you mean?
Well, I tend to tour very, 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 very go on long tours, which I'm very thankful for. But I think it's important now. I'm finding balance to be more involved in what's going on and being aware of other musicians and to play with them. And I'm concerned about the lack of, not lack of. You have to create. I think that it has to be as important as the academics. Arts have to be as important as the academics. That it's not something that you just do after you get your academics. It has to be right up there in your classes in school. And I'm not saying it's not in schools. I'm just saying that I think. If I went to any school, I'd probably spend all day there. I just love it. I love being in for instance, my children go to an amazing school, and I love just being around there. I find it inspiring just being there.
Yeah.
And they have a screen television that plays jazz or different videos of people playing. If I'd had YouTube when I was a kid, I would just be like,
You wouldn't have left the house.
No, that's why. I'd be watching Ray Brown videos and But
so if anything, this generation has more.
I guess what I was going to say, I'm concerned this concern is that kids have time to daydream.
Yeah.
Because there's so much coming at them all the time that there's space. But I think kids will naturally do that.
We're going to play "I'm Confessing" on the way out of this interview. We're going to play your version of "I'm Confessing." You said earlier that it was a rehearsal take.
Are we over now?
Well, we only had you for 20 minutes.
Well, no, I don't want to do that.
You want to keep going? You want to keep going? You enjoying yourself?
It's my favorite thing to do.
I'm having fun too. Well, talk to me about "I'm Confessing" then. We'll see where we go.
Oh, well, "I'm Confessing" was was our first day with Tony Garnier on bass, who plays with Bob Dylan for years. And I'd never worked with him before, but I knew about him. And Kareem Riggins, who's playing drums, has played with me, but he does other projects. They're all artists on their own. Mark Rebo, who has his own band called Ceramic Dog, and has been sort of the generator with Tom Waits, Rain Dogs. You're familiar with his? Yeah,
you mentioned he was on Rain Dogs, Mule Variations,
and Mule everything. He's just and he was on Glad Ride Doll. I worked with him and played with him a little bit. And Stuart Duncan on fiddle.
The great fiddle player, bluegrass fiddle player.
They're all artists who work in different genres and their own elements and their own worlds outside of jazz.
And what do you like about that? What do you like about working with non-jazz players?
I like putting that ensemble together because they all can play. They all can play jazz, but putting it just made things a little different, and it was exciting for me to see. Well, so we just started with "I'm Confessing" because it was just a warm-up tune. I thought I don't even remember what key. And Tony Garnier was right where you are. What here? I always like to have bass be right at my left hand because Jimmy Rolls taught me that you can sort of point to chords that you might want to go to with your little finger.
Oh, really?
You're
You can signal
over
to the
here,
bass player a little bit.
Over here. So Tony's here, so he's washing my hands, and he's just like, "Okay, here we go." And Rebo, and we just started playing, and Tommy LaPuma just was beside himself. He was so excited, and then I kind of forgot about it, and I didn't like my vocal performance on it. And I'm not one to overdub. I play everything live that I can.
Yeah.
And I listened to it again, and I came to Tommy. I said, "That's pretty good." And he says, "Babe, I'm telling you." He knew how to give me space. He knew that I needed space in the studio and time to like a couple days to think about things. And so that was the only song that I did some a little vocal work on because I just fell in love with it. And we had a great time making it. And but I don't like articulate. Like I said, I'm not a planner. I don't come in and say, "Okay, we got to do this and we do this." It's really just trusting that everybody that you're working with is going to bring something much more than I could ever ask them to do. And the only thing that I usually say is just play less, or it's got to be quieter, or it's just finding the vibe. And with those great artists, like, I'm just so lucky, but that they understand that, and that I understand it too. And I'm coming into my own more comfortable, as Ray said, in who I am as an artist and what I do, and not trying so hard, and letting the music happen and letting it vibe out, and not worrying about it has to be shorter than this because people don't have short attention spans, and just recall, in Sway, for instance, just let it play out so that people have time to sort of like, snog a little longer. That's how I think about it. I think it's just like this.
You get a little bit more time to
have some like vibe out tunes.
You get a little more time to kiss.
Yeah.
Like the Grateful Dead. Diana Krall, thanks for coming in.
Thank you. It's
been a pleasure.
I really loved being here today.
I love having you too.
I'll come back tomorrow.
Whenever you want. Whenever you want. Okay, so that's not all. After we wrapped the interview, Diana Krall and I started kind of noodling around on the piano, and we ended up singing a little bit of a duet. Here it is. Are you going to sing it with me? I don't know all the words. It must have been moon glow that led me straight to you. I still hear you saying, dear one, hold me fast. And I keep on praying, oh Lord, please let this last. We seem to flow right through the air. What's the next one? Heavenly song. Right?
Yeah, I think heavenly songs
seem to come from everywhere.
I just get those runs in there to cover up like.
Now there's moon glow way up in the blue. I'll always remember this moon glow gave me you. Dun, 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 dun. Well, wasn't that fun? That was the best. Still to come on Q, Dane Cook joins me to talk about success and infamy in the world of comedy. But first, Ryan Adams is in Studio Q to sing some songs and talk about his optimistic divorce record, Prisoner. Divorce can be a painful experience, one that changes lives and breaks up families. But sometimes a divorce can be a motivator. Ryan Adams figured this out the hard way. He went through a very public split from actor and recent Q guest, Mandy Moore. It wasn't over us or anything. The result is his new record, Prisoner. Ryan recently stopped by Q to talk about it. You'll hear our conversation in a moment. But first, here he is playing live in our studio. This is Ryan Adams with Do You Still Love Me?
Thinking about you, baby, you've been on my mind. But can I feel your love? My heart must be blind. What can I say? I didn't want it to change. But in my mind, ooh, it's so, so strange. Oh, do you still love me, babe? Do you still love me, babe? Do you still love me? Another year goes past, and I will count the days Another sun goes down, but we'll never see the rays. What can I say? Didn't want it to change. Is my heart blind? Which love's so strange. Oh, do you still love me, babe? Do you still love me, babe? Do you still love me? Uh-huh. 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 Uh-huh.
Ryan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You did 80. You wrote 80 songs for this and whittled it down to 12.
No, there are 70 recordings or more.
70?
Well, 70 is what we've clocked, or what my administrators and my business people have in the vault that they know exists. But there's more. But there's 70 mixed actual tracks.
Are you always this prolific when you make a record? Do you always have this many tracks going into a record?
I usually have many. I didn't when I was married, weirdly.
Why is
I
that?
usually had as many. I don't know. I don't really know. I've thought about that some. Maybe I was busy just being relaxed, or there was a different vibe for me then. Before I used to write a lot, and it was what I did, and it's what I turned to, and it was my that's my place, being creative. And then I guess I took a break or went to a different realm and existence, and then eventually I felt that need, that call to do more, and I just responded to it,
Is that call, like you said, you were busy being relaxed? Is that call?
That was a nice way of saying that I was not able to do what I wanted to do maybe all the time.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, like, does songwriting have to come, if you write at that frequency, does it have to come from a place of conflict?
No, but look, I'm a songwriter, and I like to make recordings, and if you're in a relationship where someone's going to make you feel guilty for doing that, for spending that kind of time, then you're going to eventually stop, whether it be an implied pressure or not. And I'm not saying that happened in my marriage, but even if it's an implied thing that, like, you're spending too much time doing this thing you love or whatever it is, you will compromise, or you will change how you live in order to facilitate that. I learned valuable lessons about my life before I was married, while I was married, and after. And what the greatest thing I took from it is that it isn't, oh man, I have to go on this prisoner tour. I'm going to be gone for like 8 months. It's, I get to go on this prisoner tour. I get to play for 8 months.
And didn't always feel like that?
It always did for me. I just don't have to explain it to anybody anymore.
Right. You get to do it. But that's, man, but it's not often, man. You've been playing music for a very, very long time, and to a lot of people, it isn't, I get to do this anymore. It isn't, I get to play Massey Hall. It's, well, I got to go out and I got to play
That's
Massey Hall.
That's not true.
tonight.
Every time it's I get to do it.
No, for you, I mean, that's remarkable for you. I mean, there's artists who have been playing music as long as you have who don't have that same excitement.
Well, I mean, gratitude is the attitude.
Well, yeah, but gratitude's a hard, I know, but gratitude's a hard thing to have. I mean, I'm just trying to, in this
Is
current...
it? I don't know. I don't think it is. I think it's much easier to feel toxic about stuff. I mean, in reality, I'm not always physically well, even on tour.
Yeah.
But I have to find a way to get myself into position so I could do what I want to do and play guitar and make noise and feel good. And everybody has their stuff to overcome. And I think it's, I mean, you guys are up here in Canada and relatively, at least I hope that you are far enough away from the storm that is the United States to realize that, like, I'm from this country that's like built on like animal jungle law, where it's built on adversity, and it's built on the idea that like you're going to struggle from the moment you're born until you die, and even just the act of dying means that you owe money to somebody,
And that's liberty.
to build bombs. Yeah, and it's so that as like a this isn't a political statement. This is an artistic statement I'm making. But that feeling as a human that makes art, as a human being, is my decision to like take my life and try to turn them into songs and direct them at the personal and not the political. I want to watch somebody like make tea in the morning and admire them and like watch their hands and the way that they pour the hot water.
Why?
And think about that moment to myself, because I don't want to participate in grand moves. I don't want to participate in what humans should be doing, because I just don't see anybody that way. But for me, I just want to watch the light fall on somebody's hands when they're making tea and go, why does this moment feel so painted perfectly to me? You know?
Ryan Adams, listen, thanks so much for coming in and talking to us today. I really appreciate it.
Right on.
We've got another song for you from Ryan Adams coming up later in the show. But first, my conversation with stand-up comic and actor Dane Cook. Dane Cook is one of the most successful stand-up comedians ever. He's played sold-out stadium shows, he's put out platinum-selling albums, he's starred in movie roles. To some people, Dane Cook is the picture of comedy success. But life for Dane hasn't always been funny. In his own words, it's actually a long marathon that comes with a lot of rainy days. And sure, he was open about comedy, but also about a difficult childhood, about feeling like a villain, because this is a guy who was hated by a lot of his fellow comedians, and what it's like to be an introvert when you're center stage. It's an honor to have you in. You're this
Thank you very
massive
much.
comic, and you come across on stage since day one, since I used to watch you on MySpace as this wildly confident guy. And I think I went through life thinking that you were always this wildly confident guy. And then I read in interviews about you, and I learned that you were actually quite unconfident when you were a kid. I was wondering if you could just take me back to what 22-year-old Dane Cook was like.
Oh boy, yeah. There was a completely different version of myself. Very introverted, really probably overly. Just always overanalyzing myself, especially in like social situations. When I was in school, I never quite felt like I fit in. I really was in my head a lot, and I had social anxiety. I had panic disorders. Walking to school every day, thinking about being in front of people.
And did it feel different? I know you suffered from this social anxiety and panic disorder, and when you finally started doing comedy, did you find you felt better?
I did, because then I started to take the things that I'd learned, the tools from on stage, and kind of implement them into my life. You know, life is about timing. Like, you can't let the girl go unless you're on the beat, on the pulse, and just using humor to get me in and out of situations that previously I didn't have the faith in myself that I had something to say. I couldn't look people in the eyes. I was really a true introvert. But stand-up taught me how to react and behave offstage.
I want to talk. I know you don't play. Do you still play clubs at all? Do you still go to clubs?
To work on material.
Yeah.
Yeah. It always starts back at a club, with a new idea and 30 people on a, quiet Wednesday night somewhere usually.
I mean, it's that thing now when you show up. It's very exciting. Like, I'm sure when you were working.
Or not.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about it is it dresses you down. You walk into a club, and I think audiences are so much more savvy now, and everything they want is in their timeline. And so are they excited? Sure, if they're fans, but then the rest of them are like, I'm not so sure about you. And that's actually, for me, I love that challenge of being in front of people that maybe aren't so interested.
Your trajectory is talked about a lot, in comedy. But I often just think about like what that must have been like when you got home, and there were accusations of you stealing jokes, and then you go on Louis' show and you have this wild redemptive moment,
Right.
where, and it's this really kind of powerful moment. But
Yeah.
I could only imagine that still just might be tough as a person.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that some things don't still kind of sting every once in a while.
Still?
Well, yeah. There's definitely, because more than anything, it's because things that happened in my career that might have been the opposite of like the pendulum swinging in a way, like hosting Saturday Night Live, selling out Madison Square Garden, Carnegie Hall,
Yeah.
things that are just like dream come true moments. When it goes the other way, I guess maybe sting's not the word, but sometimes you can look and say, I don't like how that affected my family. I don't like how that affected my fans. I don't like how that affected my brand when I wanted to get that meeting with, producer so-and-so, but he was on team whoever it was. That stuff that's the things that affect me. But me personally, honestly, nothing will ever be as hard as how it was growing up in my family, some of the issues that we dealt with, and alcoholism in the family, and so nothing is really as dire or as harmful as when I think back to what that was like. I've always understood that this is a very long marathon, and it comes with a lot of rainy days.
Do you feel like the stakes are higher now for young comics? Like there's less of an opportunity to mess up? With cell phones in clubs, or cell phones, video of you going on TV. Mm-hmm. In your early days when maybe you shouldn't have been on TV, do you feel like the stakes are higher for young comics?
I think in the not necessarily just for comics, but because just as a society, I think we're more of like now, and we're ready to, again, kind of click off the last page, and there's always something brand new and, dazzling us on the next, whatever it is, hundreds of channels. And it's not, you think about what comedy was in 1989, and it was like there was 3 networks. You got maybe an HBO special. Everybody knew you. Yeah. 80 million people probably watched it, and that was a low rating for whatever reason. And it was the beginning. So it's a fickle society. So it's not so much if you mess up, but if you start doing things that people think are like milquetoast and boring, then I think there's going to be somebody else that they can click over to quicker instead of giving you the time. I remember hearing like Seinfeld talk about, NBC wanted to pull that show. They were going to cancel it. And I want to say who was in charge at the time?
It was Rob Reiner, wasn't he? He was working. It was produced through Rob Reiner's company.
Had stepped forward and was like, give it a little more time. And that would not happen today. They gave that show the time, and he went out there and toured and to coincide with the show, and they got those first few ratings, and then we all know what happened from there. But that wouldn't happen now. And so what would happen to Seinfeld after this big shot that he had didn't work after several episodes? That's frustrating to think that we just don't give the time to marinate and really so that's why I say it's like the more mysterious and off the radar you can be, if you can do that as a young artist of any sort, I think it's going to benefit you later.
Dane Cook, man, thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
When Q continues, Ryan Adams has more music for you. But first, filmmaker Kelly Asbury on how a career in animated film was sparked by an early love of drawing with his dad. One of the best things about childhood is how passionately you feel about the things you like. That, and you get to eat a lot of Fun Dip. But think back to when you were a kid. You spent countless hours on the couch playing your favorite movies over and over again. And you were driving your parents crazy with The Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast or Toy Story. Or if any parents are watching this, you might remember just being driven crazy because your kid wanted to watch Frozen over and over again. Kelly Asbury is a big deal in animation. You may have not heard of him, but his latest project was directing the latest Smurfs movie, Smurfs: The Lost Village. He's also worked on Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid and Toy Story. And it turns out we have his father to thank for his love of animation. It started out when they would sit together and draw when he was a kid. Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on. I want to start by going back to your childhood, those days of drawing with your dad.
Yeah.
So you guys used to play a game together?
Yeah. Well, my dad would. We would both draw, and we'd both sort of start. He would start the story with one sentence, and then I would draw a picture that represented that start, and then I would tell the second piece, and he would draw, and we would sort of create these sort of books together that just had this sort of comic strip of these drawings that told the story. And, we both probably didn't draw that well in those days, but it was fun. And it taught me, how to make up stories and draw pictures to represent them from a really early age. And I'll always think that was really kind of the root of where my sort of passion for that came from.
When you think back to the first animated film you saw, obviously I think the first animated film you see is when you can't remember these things, when you're 1 or 2.
I do, though.
But you remember what was the first animated
The
film?
first time I went to a theater and saw an animated film was when I was probably about 7. It was the Jefferson Theater in Beaumont, Texas, where I grew up. And it was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, you got to remember, that was like 1967. In those days, you had to wait years to see these movies. We didn't have DVDs or any of the stuff we have now. We certainly didn't have Netflix. And so we had to wait. So Snow White was coming. And so I was like, you know what? I want to go see it. So my brother and I went to a matinee, and I remember watching it and seeing it on screen. And I just turned to my brother and said, someday I'm going to learn how to do that.
You knew then that this was something you wanted to do.
Oh, yeah. I was on that trajectory pretty much from that point forward.
I love the story that you end up writing to a guy at Disney, the guy who worked on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and 101 Dalmatians.
Oh, yeah.
So what did he? Who's this guy? Ken Anderson?
Ken Anderson was an art director dating all the way back. He really was one of Walt Disney's right-hand men, and in terms of design and just ideas. And I was an admirer of his work from books I'd seen. And I wrote him a letter. And
how old were you?
When I wrote that letter the first time, I was probably about 15.
That's pretty ambitious.
Yeah. At the time, I thought I might as well have been writing to the president. I was a complete Disney nerd at that point. And he forwarded the letter to a guy named Don Duckwall, if you can believe it or not.
Donald Duckwall.
Yeah, his name was Donald Duckwall, and he was a production manager at Disney for years and years.
Yeah.
And I never met him in person, but I got this letter back, and I thought, they're joking with me now. What is that? And I realized, no, he's a real guy, and he told me about California Institute of the Arts, and told me how to get a job, and if you want to do it, you got to learn. You got to go to school for it, and that's what I did. And that was a long time ago now.
That's incredible. I want to play a clip from the first movie you got screen credit for. This is Disney's The Black Cauldron.
Oh, yes.
I've never seen The Black Cauldron. For far as I can tell, it's not exactly Snow White. So what you're about to hear, this is when the Horned King uses the cauldron to raise the dead, and his cauldron-born army begins to pour out into the world.
My, such a brave and handsome group. A pig boy, a scullery maid, and a broken-down minstrel. Perhaps it may interest you to see what fate has in store for you.
From the 1985 animated Disney film, The Black Cauldron, where the Horned King raises his dead army out of the cauldron. That was the first screen credit for my guest, Kelly Asbury, director of Smurfs: The Lost Village. So I understand it was some kind of bet you made in high school with a friend?
Disney put out in Life magazine somewhere around 1977 or 78. There was a Life magazine article about upcoming films from Disney, and it said that The Black Cauldron would be released somewhere in like 1984, 85. And I said to a person, this friend next to me, I said, you know what? I'm going to work on that movie. You watch. And I ended up doing it, sort of by happenstance.
What do you mean?
Well, I was working at another company, and a friend of mine had gotten a job at Disney. It was right after I got out of school, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, they need an in-between artist over here, and I gave your name, and they need him now. And can you just, can you send your portfolio?" So it was just this timing thing where I got in there, and I worked on that movie. It was my first actual animated feature.
You must have been so excited.
I was beside myself. I couldn't believe it. And then to see my name on screen that first time I actually thought, wow, I'm on the path I wanted to be on.
We could talk forever. I mean, I want to fast forward a little bit. We could spend the next 3 hours talking about the films you made. I want to talk a little bit about The Nightmare Before Christmas. I want to talk about Tim Burton. This is considered to be one of the greatest animated films, and at least a very groundbreaking animated film.
Oh, yeah.
First animated film to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects.
Yep.
And you also worked on Beauty and the Beast,
Yeah.
which was the first animated film to be nominated for
Best Picture.
For Best Picture. I know that animated films sometimes suffer from a lack of recognition. What did that recognition mean to you?
it was as much about the teamwork that went into making it. I had worked on the story team, and I had done some visual development for that picture. My good friends, Kirk Weiss and Gary Trousdale, were the directors. It was their directing debut. We all were in the same peer group coming out of Cal Arts. And so it was meaningful on so many levels, all those that I just named, because it felt like, wow, we actually are entering into a world where adults are kind of re-embracing animation the way they used to before television. Television kind of turned animation into a bit of a babysitter, I think.
Okay.
Saturday
It's
morning
interesting.
TV. Prior to television in the 40s and early 50s, everyone went to animated features, and they weren't just a children's medium. But that sort of happened, and then I think Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid and certainly Lion King suddenly brought adults into the theater to see movies. So it was to see animated movies. So it was certainly a great time to be coming up in the business for that.
Kelly Asbury, it's been such a pleasure.
Oh, it's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've got another special unplugged performance for you from Ryan Adams when Q returns. We're going to leave you today with Ryan Adams performing the title track from his latest record, Prisoner. Remember, for more performances, uncut interviews, and full episodes of QTV, pay us a visit at cbc.ca/Q. I'm Tom Power. Later on.
Free my heart. Somebody locked it up. Still waiting on parole. I can taste the freedom just outside that door. Same gray walls, same gray clothes. I know my friends all know. Can't keep it under control. I know our love is wrong. I am a criminal. I am a prisoner. I am a prisoner for your love. There's this one bird lands on the sill beside the bars. How can something born with wings ever know freedom, ever truly be free? The clock don't know what your memories do. They're stacking up beside the bed. I count them every night inside my head. I know our love is wrong. I am a criminal. I am a prisoner. I am a prisoner. If loving you is wrong, I am a criminal. I am a prisoner. I am a prisoner for your love.